Well, a new assignment for the NYPD. They are now being called upon to help ease the crisis on Rikers Island. Listen.
We need to do some things very, very differently. We're going to use emergency orders to make some very intense changes in the situation. We're going to be bringing in additional help from a crucial sister agency, the NYPD, to help with certain discrete functions that will take pressure off the Department of Corrections so correction officers can go and take care of other tasks.
Mayor Blasio right there announcing the emergency Rikers relief plan yesterday. Police Commissioner Dermot Shea joining me now to just explain how this will impact the department plus more. Good morning to you, Commissioner. Good to see you.
Hey, Dan. Good to be on.
So, Commissioner, let's begin with this Rikers topic, right? Because the idea here is to bring the NYPD to fill staffing support in courts so that correction officers can instead stay on Rikers Island. When did you find out about the NYPD's role in the emergency relief plan, and do you support it?
Well, listen, the NYPD is often called upon to help out in any way, so that's our history, and we'll continue to do that. We've had talks over the last week or so about this. The challenge, Dan, is, how do we do it? The thought right now is overtime, but there's clearly a lot of training that needs to be done, and the one thing we don't want to do is take cops off the street because we still have some other issues.
Right, now that's what I was going to ask you about training and overtime, because earlier this year we know the NYPD was called on to add more officers to the subways, and there was a lot of back and forth on how many would actually be deployed. So do you know, Commissioner, at this time, how many NYPD officers will be called upon in this case, and do you have to reassign them?
That's what we're working out right now. Our Criminal Justice Bureau is meeting with corrections officials. We're trying to get the lay of the land in terms of, how things run. That is, something that we're not necessarily doing all the time, to be fair. So we have to kind of see how they're running it. Would we make modifications? Then we'll make a determination how many people are needed. And then we'll have to decide where they come from. But again, we're balancing a lot of balls here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine you want to spend some of your budget on more overtime, right?
Yeah, Dan, listen, we'll do whatever we have to do.
Yeah.
It's clearly a difficult situation over there. But Dan, listen, let me remind people, because I'm reading a lot of stories and headlines and press conferences about Rikers Island. There's about 6,000 inmates on Rikers Island. Mm-hmm. Before the bail reform, which was, let's say, November of 19, there was 7,000. So we know what happened when Rikers Island emptied out, and let's make sure that we do things slowly, methodically, that doesn't negatively impact the public safety in New York.
Let's say
any discussion, look, I got to say this, any discussion of emptying out Rikers Island is to me ludicrous.
So let me talk about that, because I've spoken this week to Congressman Jamal Bowman, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, who say they need to look at releasing some inmates who they say should not be there to begin with, Commissioner, and that's part of the plan now that we're hearing. Right? Releasing some folks who should not be in there. So do you agree with that part of the emergency relief plan that calls for the non-violent offenders and parole violators to ease the overcrowding?
I think you hear a lot of rhetoric, but facts matter. So let's have these conversations and let's lay out on the table who specifically and what are they in Rikers Island for? And like you hear all this talk about parole violators. I can't even tell you how difficult it is to get somebody violated on parole. We work closely with parole, but you hear a lot of this rhetoric. You got to really lay down on the table who are we talking about and what the public safety impact is going to be. Again, historically, 22,000 inmates. We had gotten it down to 7. It's at 6 right now. Mm-hmm. Before you start releasing anyone, you got to think about the public, Dan. And, you also have to think about what happens downstream. Last year, we had the highest ever overdoses,
right,
where people are dying than I've ever seen before in New York City. So how many inmates that were released wound up getting shot and killed? How many inmates that were released wound up committing domestic violence? How many inmates that were released are now dead from an overdose? So if we want to have these hearings, I'd be thrilled to sit down with my staff and testify, and let's do it in a manner that is transparent as possible.
Do you have an example then, Commissioner, and then I'll move on from this topic. Do you have an example of, say, a non-violent offender who shouldn't be there that could be put back on the streets or rehabilitated in a different way?
Dan, I think that's a soundbite. I'll be honest with you. it is extremely difficult to get individuals into Rikers Island. You are looking at people that are either violent, awaiting trial on a violent case. You're looking at repeat offenders that over and over do it again. So that's my knowledge. But if others have other evidence of people that are in there for very low-level crimes and first-time offenses and don't belong there, then I think we should have those conversations, because no one wants people like that on Rikers Island. I'm just saying that I know there's a lot of rhetoric that goes on. There's a lot of press conferences that go on. We have people that believe no one should be incarcerated, and we all know what happened last year when you had a drastic reduction of not only state prisons and city jails. And we don't want to go on to that, because we have to protect the public.
Understood.
That is who we work for. We can't have quality of life plummeting. We already have concerns, about some things that I'm sure you're always eager to bring those up with me about individual cases. So it's a fine balance.
It is.
But rushing into something and doing it haphazardly, I believe, would be a mistake.
And we're gonna...
Let's remember, Dan, we have the envy of what every city in the United States wants. An island where our jail is. So how do we make it better? I don't care where the jail is, quite frankly, but if the conditions are not safe, well, then let's improve them for the sake of the guards and for the sake of the inmates.
And we're going to stay on top of this every step of the way. We will. But you mentioned some of those cases that I'm going to ask about. So I do want to pivot to some headline-making cases to get some updates for our viewers. So the manhunt underway right now for the gunman who shot and killed, this is an awful story, Commissioner, a pregnant woman in Harlem over the weekend. Detectives released the suspect's picture. Do we know anything about this individual?
No, we just need the public's help on this one. So anyone with any information, please reach out to our Crime Stoppers. This is just an awful shooting, and now kids that are growing up without a mother in Harlem, and it's just you're showing the pictures there. It just tears at your heart. So please, anyone that has information, let's get this dangerous individual off the streets.
Yeah, another case that was just shocking to watch was the suspect seen kicking a woman down an escalator on a subway. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see that video, Commissioner, but any update on the hunt for this individual here?
No, that was in Brooklyn. I tweeted that video out last week. It's you just look at those things and you shake your head. We need help with this one as well. No doubt, I have confidence in the investigators and the public. Somebody will recognize something about this individual, but please, we need your help on this.
Commissioner, I want to pivot to some COVID concerns. I know the NYPD was not tasked with enforcement for vaccine passes to get into establishments, but have there been any instances so far this week of the NYPD having to be called thus far because of any kind of issues?
No, not to my knowledge. And by the way, Dan, I know you'll ask me, we're up to 57%, so continuing to grow. NYPD members, civilians and uniformed, vaccinated. In terms of responding to restaurants, no, we're not tasked with that. We view it as any other situation, really. I mean, if there was somebody unruly in a location, the restaurants have the right, obviously, to refuse them coming in, and we'd ask them to leave. If they refuse, they'd be subject to arrest for trespassing.
Yeah, certainly. You knew I was going to ask. We're going to update that number right there to 57% of the NYPD now vaccinated. Quickly, Commissioner, New York City students went back to school this week. Did you have to add more NYPD patrols to subways or near schools? I know things were changing with school safety officers as well. What's the update here?
Yeah, it's a combination of a team effort, whether it's our school safety agents, certainly, the trains with Kathy O'Reilly, but also the traffic too. I think all New Yorkers have seen the bump up in traffic over the last few days.
Yeah.
So we ask everyone to be patient for sure. But yeah, it's a fluid situation, and it's great to see the kids back in school.
Yeah, I've seen definitely a lot more cars. Speaking of tweets, because you've been very active on Twitter, I do want to end on this tweet that you sent out last night welcoming Broadway back to New York City. Now, you were retweeting the Wicked musical. Have you seen it, or are you going to see it?
I saw it many years ago with my wife and kids. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was phenomenal.
So is there a new show you want to see, Commissioner?
There's a lot, but a little busy these days.
Are you? A little busy indeed, right? Okay, Commissioner. Thank you so much for your conversation. As always, I'll talk to you next time, okay?
Have a great day, everyone. Yep.
You too. Thanks.